universe into existence. Boom, and there we have fully formed universe. That's because when live streaming, I don't have the technology to. Um, yeah, I'm doing this pretty crude. So just kind of, there we go. Intro. Actually, no, it didn't even do that. Yeah. It'd be better off with the Society of Bastet card than the Coffin Crisp. The Coffin Crisp doesn't make for a very good intro. Yeah. Halloween chocolate bar at the 27th of December. So, it's almost time to say Happy New Year's. Or as they used to say years ago, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year's. Or the more simple, more easy thing to say, Happy Holidays. Because there's a bunch of holiday stuff at the same time. Of course, that gets some people upset, which I find amusing. I find amusing that the term Happy Holidays gets people upset. And if you've ever seen clips from Fox News, yeah, you've seen people get upset at the expression Happy Holidays. Oh my God, they're hiding Christmas. They're taking the Christ out of the Christmas season. Yeah, man, that's just classic. I mean, stupid, comical. It's something to get a laugh at. People get all freaked out over Happy Holidays, and then every now and then you'll see people bring it up. It's like, you can't even say Merry Christmas anymore. You can't. I mean, from the end of November, I think this might have been the first year, probably because I didn't spend that much time in the malls and I didn't go as many places. But normally, right around the end of November, it's like, oh, there's the Christmas music again. And it's not like Christmas music is constantly saying the word Christmas all the time, If Christmas was Beetlejuice, he would be everywhere, It's like, by the end of usually by the beginning of December, I've gone from, it's like, oh, there's the Christmas music again, to, wow, I'm really sick of this fucking Christmas music. Ah! But, and then you get the people like, you can't even say Christmas anymore. They want you to say Happy Holidays. Oh, it's so secular and horrible. Well, doesn't holiday, it's come to mean vacation day. Holiday kind of does now. But technically, holiday, means hallowed day, religious day, holy day. It's like, now they don't want us to say Christmas anymore. It's like, what are people, people are constantly saying Christmas. It's smeared across the landscape. It's, but people get all upset because the expression that used to be short for Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, a more simple expression, gets used. Probably because I think it's just people being anti-Semitic, and they're like, you know what? They might be trying to include Hanukkah. Ooh, in with the holiday season. How dare somebody else have a holiday? And I was like, Christmas is just as secular as the term holiday now anyway. What's the most popular atheist holiday? Probably Christmas. Atheists like Christmas. They like lights. They like old pagan traditions reappropriated for contemporary usage, like decorating trees. The holiday season. Actually, I haven't heard much of that this year, but I also haven't been paying attention to as much of that stuff recently, but it was like this constant thing. Just about every year I hear somewhere on television or some reference to, they don't want you to say Merry Christmas anymore. They don't? Really? I got nothing against just saying it, and I've been hearing it constantly. I don't have anything. You don't want to say it, say it. You don't want to say it, I don't give a rat's ass, but I've been hearing it all over the place. What do I care if you call Christmas or a holiday season? And the car that delivers the mail just came. Yeah. Anyway, I decided to ramble and do a video. I got mail today. Yeah, now the flag's not up on the mailbox, but it's not up on the neighbor's mailbox either, so maybe the flag fell down. I don't know. I'll check the mailbox after. But I figure, rather than fill up space on my camera, I felt like doing a video. And perhaps after this goes live, I can reappropriate the footage and edit it into another video at some point in time. So while I could be live streaming on YouTube, this could possibly gain a bigger audience in another video on YouTube, which is just me trying to avoid saying, I could also use this on BitChute or DTube, and, which makes me think of the state of the internet. Hi, little cat. Here comes a cat. Oh, it's a cat. We have a cat. We have a cat. Look at the cat. Look at the cat. The cat has come. The cat has arrived. Look at that. There we go. Okay. Oh, yeah, there you go. Cat didn't want to stay still. Cat didn't want to be on camera. No, but it's like, most interesting thing about the internet or internet culture right now to me was, well, a lot of the people that I followed on the internet, they made their living thanks to Patreon. And I don't know if Patreon's on its way out or not. People aren't happy with Patreon no more. Which goes to show you, look at how many people are angry at YouTube. YouTube recently did a video talking about what's new with YouTube and what they're trying to promote. I never watched the video myself. It just never came up, and I never thought to watch it. And now I'm thinking, I probably should have. I probably should have so I could talk about it. But what I do know is, well, it seemed to be nothing particularly wrong with it. It wasn't like, what little clips of it I saw didn't look like, well, the production values are horrible. Somebody's saying something particularly offensive. It wasn't that. It's just, people weren't happy with how YouTube was promoting itself, and people are just generally pissed at YouTube in general, because it's a place where the small-time content creators have gone to basically used it to become, trying to think of the word for it. But I think you already know what I'm getting at. It's not esoteric. It's a very exoteric concept. It's very, what YouTube does. You know how everybody wants to be on YouTube, and it's where people are getting their entertainment. It's bigger than any one television channel. It's probably bigger than satellite television as a whole. And it allowed people to broadcast themselves onto the internet and people to be entertained by something other than the generic schlock the channels were putting out. There, I think I explained it. YouTube was what everybody wanted, everybody needed, and we're really glad to have it. But since there was a focus less on the small-time content creators, people have been irate about that. But not to the point where they stopped using YouTube. Because people just love YouTube so much. And that's the spin I'm going to put on it, since I'm live streaming this on the YouTube. And I figure I probably shouldn't be too negative. Just full disclosure, I'm not going as negative with that as honesty would normally draw me to do. But I will say, YouTube, it hasn't gone away, no matter how angry people got with YouTube. They're still on YouTube. I'm still on YouTube. As far as I can tell, I can get a bigger audience on DTube and BitChute, but here I am still using YouTube because it's so omnipresent, and plus it's easier for me to live stream on. And there's also DLive, but, have you tried using it when it was back on the Steemit blockchain? It was designed, it kept getting better and better and better, then it moved over to Lino, which there's some advantages to that. I will say there's been some advantages to that. But it's like, oh, well, you're going to upload a video? Is it more than 40 megabytes? Well, it might just fail to upload. And then they'll say, well, no, if you're going to upload videos, make sure you use a wired connection. Plug in an Ethernet cable. Don't use a wireless connection. That's more likely to screw up the process. And it's like, no, plugging in the Ethernet cable doesn't help. Uploading to this place is pretty glitchy. But I think DLive will eventually fix that. But simply put, it's everybody stays on YouTube. Everybody stays on YouTube, no matter how angry they get. Patreon, not YouTube. It's not YouTube. Because Patreon, was it Gavin McInnes first, or was it Milo Yiannopoulos? Don't know. Just saying those names almost makes me want to laugh. What's wrong with the Gavin McInnes and what's wrong with Milo Yiannopoulos? Oh, I don't know how to explain it, but it's not because it's too esoteric. Once again, it's too exoteric. You either get it or you don't, and... Oh, my God. Oh. Well, I think Milo Yiannopoulos tried to make a comeback, and he was on Patreon, for like an hour, and they're like, nope, get rid of him. You know what? Can I kind of under... Oh, yeah, it was because he supposedly was affiliated with the Proud Boys. Affiliated. I guess he wasn't really promoting them. Story has it he disavowed them or something like... I don't know. I don't care. I mean, when you got an organization called the Proud Boys, and then you see what they are, it's like... You kind of want to laugh at them. You can't. It's amusing. It's amusing to me as somebody who's been watching the human species swirl around the drain, just going down the toilet. You know, things like that are amusing. When you don't have any standards, when you're willing to watch, when it's come to the point where your hope for being part of a great species is mostly just, yeah, you might as well at least laugh at them while they're flushing the species down the toilet. You know. When you look at the species for what it really is, the Proud Boys are kind of funny. They're kind of funny. They're not role models. I'm not approving of them. But you gotta kind of laugh at their existence. But anyway, yeah, Milo Yiannopoulos booted off that thing in, that hour. And I guess Gavin McInnes had a similar experience there. Gavin McInnes. You know, if the social justice warriors ever want a straw man, Gavin McInnes will be there for them. You want to see a bad example? Gavin McInnes. But I suppose I could say that I'm just mocking Gavin McInnes and not going into much detail on what's wrong with him, just making a few jokes vaguely here, just vaguely spewing out some comments. But you know what? That wasn't the purpose of this. The purpose was to comment on the fact that, he was deplatformed as fast as he could be platformed. Like, Gavin McInnes is basically booted off the internet, like Alex Jones. Which, I don't really approve of people being deplatformed. It's just not a good idea. You can laugh at them, you mock them, you disagree with them, but there's certain reasons to deplatform people, but... I don't recommend it. It's not a good thing. But what happened after Gavin McInnes and Milo Yiannopoulos got booted off Patreon? Sargon of Akkad, whom I've seen many videos of over the years. I don't follow him regularly. Like I know he makes a lot of videos, so I've probably seen less than 1% of his videos. Why? Well, there's two reasons. The first one would be... there's a lot of people out there to follow on the internet. Watching a YouTube video takes up a certain amount of time. You can't follow everybody. And two, I don't like Sargon of Akkad. Don't hate him as a person, because I know very little of him as a person, because I don't follow him. I just... A few videos of his came up that I kind of liked. But for the most part, not really. No. I think the first video I saw of him was basically him calling somebody a fucking idiot for disagreeing with him, and they were having like a debate. And I think it was... Sargon was basically saying some sort of bullshit about men just act like men and women just act like women because biology. And the other, I think he cited like some sort of study where they gave toys to I don't know, chimps or some species of ape other than human. And if you look it up, you can find it, but it's actually hard to find any like real information on it other than a superficial version of it where they show, look, the male apes played with the boy toys and the girl apes played with the girl toys. And you see people citing that as like this proof that gender interests are completely biological. And apparently if you read, when you can actually come up with information on it, one version of it actually came up saying, well, actually the girl apes were playing with both the male and female toys, but just the male apes were only playing with the male toys, or something like that. And then in the end, of course, the male apes went off with the male toys and whatever, And then it's based around the idea that because they don't have communicating language, there's no culture to make them decide which toys to take. Like, there's all sorts of assumptions that it makes, but basically, somehow they try to apply it to real world culture, and they'll say, men just like to make things, and women just like soft fuzzy things, or some shit like that. You'll hear people taking from that one obscure study, which I've never really seen people reproduce that study. You know, it seemed fairly questionable to me, and it just seemed absurd. And I always thought it was kind of funny. They'll say, yeah, men just like to get into hardware and make things, because women just don't have that interest. You'll see like comments like that used to justify the way society turned out, as if it was all biological, as if all our culture is just a complete biological function. And it's like, wait, you're saying women don't like to make things? You mean you never see women involved with crafts, manufacturing of clothing, furniture? You know, you never see that? Never? That's not something that seems to happen naturally, you're saying? I mean, it's usually stupid bullshit being backed up by this crazy ape study. And the first video I saw of Sargon of Akkad was him calling somebody an idiot for not agreeing with the study. And the guy was saying, well, look, if you look at this, it's been debunked here, and there. And Sargon of Akkad just saying, no, you're just a fucking idiot. Everybody knew this since they were a school kid. And the guy saying, well, look, if you this, and this. And he goes, what? I was making fun of you. What are you doing responding to that like I was serious? Well, it's hard to tell when you're being serious. Like, it was like this long ongoing thing of Sargon of Akkad being a jackass to somebody who didn't take that stupid, if you could even call it a study, that stupid thing was serious, and saying that he's seen it debunked in some other article. And I watched that. I kind of had no interest in going back and rewatching it until later. I thought, I should watch that again, look it up and see the actual studies and what studies supposedly debunked it and etc. Just out of curiosity, and then I couldn't find it later on. But basically, my introduction to Sargon of Akkad was him calling somebody an idiot for not believing some silly thing that Sargon believed. And I was like, not a fan, And it was a few other incidences where I started watching Sargon. That's basically the response I had. It's like, he just seemed full of crap. Now, the one thing I kind of viewed as good about Sargon of Akkad and his claim to fame is, Gamergate, mocking Anita Sarkeesian, who was a complete and utter dumbass and deserved mocking. I mean, Anita Sarkeesian was absurdly full of shit. And, yeah, I mean, Anita Sarkeesian just wanted to say, what, you play video games? Look, there's a woman on the screen. She's shaped like a woman with woman curves. You're looking at that. You're a sexist pig. That's what you could basically concentrate what Anita Sarkeesian was saying into. Like, if you were to just concentrate the meaning of just about everything she said down to a reoccurring concept, that's basically what it was. It's like, there's a Lara Croft in Tomb Raider from decades ago. Barely shaped like a human. Polygons and made out of polygons that are crude, angled shapes, but kinda overall that you can tell she's a human being. Therefore, you must be a sex pervert looking at her on the screen, because there she is, back on from the camera. Well, of course she's back on from the camera. You're looking at her from behind. If you're looking at her from the front, she'd be walking towards the camera. You wouldn't see what she's fucking doing. She's centered in the screen. Look at how her ass is in the center of the screen. That's like, well, her ass is a little bit lower than the center of the screen, but from left to right, yeah, she has to be in the center of the screen. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see what the fuck's going on around her, dumbass. But, that's basically an Anita Sarkeesian video and how easy it is to debunk it. I mean, it was moronic. But I'm not a fan. I'm just trying to say, I'm not a fan of Sargon of Akkad, though he actually has done some things, some videos, and said some stuff I liked. They booted him off Patreon. he's got a huge following, and that did not go over well for Patreon. For good reason. And the thing is, the thing they booted Sargon of Akkad off of Patreon for, and I never looked into it too closely, but everything I've heard from like different people, including people who criticize Sargon of Akkad, was he was like debating basically racists, which, you know, good on him. He's not really racist. Anything I've heard that he said, he argues against racists. And he used one of those words that for a while was, because pulp culture was using it in music and movies in positive ways. It was basically one of those bad words that was used by, granted by pasty white pricks who wanted to put another group of people down. So the word was used as a tool to misuse and abuse people. Though, I will say, a decade ago and a decade before that, the word was being used in pop culture in ways that kind of devalued the harm it was able to do, because it was just turning it into just a word, Well, I understand why people might not want to use that word. And in fact, I'm pretty sure the YouTube algorithm wouldn't be happy if it picks it up in a video. So it's usually best not to say it on YouTube, even if you're using the appropriate reason of just describing what was going on. That said, he used that bad word. But did he use it in a concept that was racist or degrading the race that it was, the group of people that was used to abuse and mistreat, that was used to put down? No. He used it to describe white people. He basically said, well, these people are just white, that word, and he was using it to argue against racists. So he was arguing against racism, using a racist term, throwing it back at racists, against them. So, and he got in trouble for that. Now, logically, you break it down. Unless you're going to go after every single usage of that word, you have no reasonable grounds for attacking him over it. I'm sorry, no matter how much you might hate that word, he used it in a sentence to arguing against racists. And that was specifically what he was targeted for and booted off Patreon, which he did not do even on Patreon's own platform. He did it elsewhere. Or at least it wasn't his own. So basically, they just wanted to get rid of him. They wanted to get rid of him, and they found a reason. And he was somebody with a lot of supporters. It's like, if you love him or you hate him, he's got a lot of supporters. And I'll tell you, I don't hate him. In fact, the fact that he was... there is something that Sargon of Akkad does that I like and respect. He goes anywhere, debates anybody, talks to anybody, argues with anybody. What I don't like is how, even when it's not justified, he'll just go, well, you're just a fucking idiot. It's like, he goes into that mode way too often. It's probably why he has as big a fan following as he has, for better or worse. But, I remember watching, I think they called it the Woolly Bumblebee live stream, or whatever, something like that. I forget what it was called. But, they had their followers. It was a pretty small number. And I remember Sargon of Akkad went in there and was talking to them, debating them, and arguing with them, And he wasn't particularly unfriendly. They were disagreeing with something he was doing and saying, and he came and he debated them. I mean, he was big enough, popular enough, successful enough. He didn't need to do that. But he did it. Like, there are things about him I can appreciate. And that'll be one of them. He actually does talk to people and argue with them. My first experiences with him was basically him being an idiot, calling other people idiots. And I wasn't impressed. That said, give him credit. Like I said, if I knew him in person, maybe I'd like him, maybe I'd hate him. I have no idea. Maybe if I watched more of his stuff, I'd like him more. Maybe I'd like him less. I don't know. But when he got booted off Patreon, that was pretty bad. And the fact that Patreon is what a lot of the content creators use to keep themselves going, like a lot of the people on YouTube use Patreon as a secondary site. Well, that fact is not very positive or helpful. The fact that Sargon could get kicked off of it, anybody could get kicked off of it, and add to that, a lot of people are leaving Patreon over what they did and not supporting other people that they like on Patreon simply because they're leaving Patreon. See, and I never got involved with Patreon. I looked at it and thought, well, there's people I like, $1 a month to support some people. That wouldn't be too bad. But I just never got into it. I figured there's other ways to support the content creators I like, such as if I'm watching somebody's video and an ad comes up, I'll often watch the ad unless they're like a corporately produced mainstream media site, in which case I'll skip the ad. But if it's like a content creator like The Amazing Atheist or Mundane Matt, I'll watch the ads on their videos because I know that helps support them. And excuse me, and I don't really mind advertisements myself anyway. But if it's like CBS's or CNN's or some major media corporation's YouTube page, or some group that they're like a major corporately funded site, it's like, fuck it, why take the time to watch the ad? I only get so much time in the day. I'll skip the ad in that circumstance. That's usually how I support people. I try to support them. If they're on DTube, I'll try to support them there. If they're on BitChute, I'll try to, share their videos around and so forth. But, Patreon, I never really gave it a try simply because at the end of the month I might not have an extra dollar in my account to support people with. So I don't do that. I just never got into Patreon. I thought about it different times, and as for the fact that I make videos myself, the idea of putting them on Patreon, it's like, I don't have content good enough to make people pay to go see it. Yeah, it's probably not the best way to promote my own work, but that's just, maybe if I made a whole lot more videos, I'd consider giving it a try. But, I had no interest in putting my own stuff on Patreon, so I never got into Patreon. Really, it's just that simple. But Subscribestar, I was kind of curious about that because that was smaller and newer when I started hearing about that. And I started hearing about Subscribestar because it did what Patreon did, but it was new and it was promising to be censorship-free. And then PayPal caught on to that, and PayPal started to deny them service, which means PayPal's backing up Patreon in their censoring and deplatforming of people, making it harder for people to go to Subscribestar. Wow. Which is also going to help make people get more interested into cryptocurrency because people want to support their favorite content creators. These content creators are going to be looking for money, ways to make money off of their content, because, if you can't make money off your content, then you don't have the time to do it, because then you have to work another job, because you're going to have to eat and keep the electricity on. So, it kind of is a bad sign. It's more of a struggle for, internet culture because, people want to get paid for the work and people want to get their content out there. People want to watch this stuff. And Patreon's starting to censor people like it hadn't before. And people are noticing. As PayPal didn't just cut support to Subscribestar, and it also won't let Alex Jones use PayPal at all, which is basically saying, hey, Alex Jones, you said some dumb stuff, so now you're not allowed to use money. You know what? Alex Jones has said a lot of crazy stuff that I consider disagreeable, paranoid, nutjob bullshit, He's another gun-toting lunatic that every time there's like a shooting, he's like, it's just a conspiracy to take our guns away. That nonsense, that bullshit, which I don't view as particularly healthy for civilization, but you know what? Maybe he thinks it, maybe it's just one of his performance pieces. I don't know. I don't care. But he's technically anti-war, so to me he's less harmful than, say, Rachel Maddow. I mean, in the last little while, I've seen Rachel Maddow come up with crazy conspiracy theories that would make Glenn Beck blush over trying to connect Trump to crazy shit going on. And there's lots of reasons to complain about Trump, but she'll use it for excuses for keeping people in wars. She'll be like, well, if we have peace with North Korea, well, Russia's really going to like that. So it's really just Trump bowing over to Putin and blah, blah, blah. That's like, bitch, you're fucking trying to get people paranoid and in favor of fucking war. You're a warmongering, horrible creature. Now, when you see these fake liberals, these regressive morons who have gone pro-war because they hate Trump. It's like, okay, fine, hate Trump. I can think of reasons to hate Trump. That's fine. But now you're fucking pro-war. You're an asshole. You're a fucking asshole. You hate Trump, so you're willing to be pro-war. When one of the good things he might actually do is not war. Rachel Maddow's on MSNBC, blah blah blah, whatever. They gotta make their money from Comcast, who does defense contracts. It's like, no, the people on the mainstream media are far scarier with a more horrible agenda than Alex Jones. And as crazy and nuts as Alex Jones is, thing is, one of the few times he criticized Trump, because he's normally just fluffing Trump, that's basically Alex Jones' main thing to do for the past, 2 or 3 years now, just fluffing Trump. We'll get you stiff there, Trump. You might not have Stormy Daniels, but you still have old Alex Jones to fluff you up, suck you off, and get you ready for business. It's like, yes, Trump, what can I do to please you today? Alex Jones was all about sucking Trump's. Stormy Daniels gave the description. Alex Jones was all about fluffing Trump. Just trying to get Trump's mushrooms stiff. And, whatever. It's like, sure, but the one time he criticized him, he got all upset. It was like he was crying and freaked out and pissed off about it. Was when Trump bombed some people. When he was like, and Alex Jones got upset about Trump bombing Syria, which is the appropriate response, by the way. When most of the media was like, he didn't bomb them enough. It's like, no, these people are fucking evil. He shouldn't have been bombing them in the first place. Somebody farts in Syria. That's not an excuse to go blow shit up, okay? Fucking stupid, fucking horrible, and fucking evil. But that's the job. That's the job when you're in charge of one of those nations. That's your job, to make money for the richest people who pay for your campaigns and your political party members. You got to keep all those people happy, which involves jerking off the defense contractors, because hey, you get people scared of foreigners, then you can take their tax money give it to the defense companies for them to waste, but they'll use a certain amount of it bribing or contributing to politicians and political parties. It's, a lovely little circle which murders massive numbers of humans. It's pretty horrible. But, you know what? Alex Jones isn't part of that. He says a lot of stupid, horrible shit. But as far as I'm concerned, if Rachel Maddow's going to be on TV spreading propaganda to encourage people to, murder foreigners, and Alex Jones is arguing against it, I'm going to say the whack job that Alex Jones is not as bad as Rachel Maddow. But Alex Jones got the internet death sentence, which, is metaphoric for they boot him off of just about everywhere, except for he has his own site, the InfoWars site. And along with him went Milo Yiannopoulos, whom there's a lot of reason to disagree with Milo Yiannopoulos. He's been full of shit fairly often, but it's not as bad as Alex Jones. Well, no, I don't know. Alex Jones has more redeeming qualities than Milo Yiannopoulos, because you hear more about Alex Jones being anti-war. Then there's Gavin McInnes. I mean, we're not talking about the best examples of people you want to see on the internet, but the idea of deplatforming them and taking them off the internet, not allowing them on the internet, seems pretty fucking bad. That seems, abhorrent. Yeah, so that's the state of the internet. Anyway, Subscribestar lost its PayPal support, so they're limited to using cryptocurrency. BitChute, PayPal won't work with BitChute because BitChute allows people to... actually, you can support somebody on BitChute. You want to go donate some money on one of my BitChute videos? Yeah, go ahead. You can send money to PayPal, that way. But I think when you supported somebody's video on BitChute in the past, a small amount of it went to BitChute, which makes sense through the site that actually hosts the video, and you could donate directly to BitChute. Well, now PayPal won't send the money to BitChute, even though BitChute now can be used as a site, can still be used as a site to connect you or connect your videos, connect people to your PayPal to send you money. So you can support content creators on BitChute. It's just that you can't use the PayPal to support BitChute itself. So you have to go through other means to support BitChute. And not only will PayPal not work with BitChute, BitChute apparently had tried to take out a Patreon, and Patreon would not support BitChute. So you have all these corporate entities trying to make sure that uncensored media gets shut up. And of course you have the snowflakes on the right saying, oh, they're just going after right-wing people. And it's like, no, there's people on the left that get hit too. It's just that the right just happens to have the most outstanding, noticeable, crazy people that you really notice. And I'm thirsty. So the state of the internet is not that great when it comes to getting your content from various content creators. But that said, it also looks like it might force people towards cryptocurrency, which is fine by me. I mean, I'm not that good with accounting, so dealing with cryptocurrency is not a skill of mine, but But then again, just about everybody when YouTube deplatformed a lot of small content creators on YouTube, around that same time, even some larger content creators were unhappy with YouTube. And a lot of them gave DTube a try. And a lot of them got bored with DTube, probably because they weren't getting as many followers as they did on YouTube. And even when they weren't making money off of YouTube, the YouTube was still promoting their Patreon. So everybody just kind of forgot about DTube. Except for me, I kind of like DTube. I noticed some of my oldest videos, the actual post is still there on the blockchain. Like, if you know where to... If I were to have a link to it, I could still access it. But I know some of them don't display. Like the really oldest stuff, like the actual posts. At the same time, the actual videos themselves, those ones don't play anyway, because like DTube, unlike BitChute and DLive and BitTube, unlike those, and YouTube, of course, YouTube is the master of places where you can put old content and keep it up. Unlike that, like the amount of time that a video stays up there is basically it. If it's based on, I don't know exactly how long the default amount of time is, but when you post a video to DTube, it's going to be shared on their interplanetary file network for so long as a default amount of time, which supposedly is going to improve with time. Then on top of that, you'll get extra time based on the amount of cryptocurrency, Steam, that the video earns, because DTube takes a small cut of that, a very small cut of it, and based on that, will determine a little bit of extra time on how long the video will remain up, but that'll be kind of like divided by or reduced by how big the video is. So the bigger, the more data that the video takes up, that'll cut down how long we'll share it for, but the amount of cryptocurrency it earns, Steam, amount of Steam it earns, will increase the amount of time they'll support it for. That said, if you have an old video that doesn't play anymore, it seems as though you can re-upload old stuff anyway, if it no longer plays. At least that's been my experience, because one time I uploaded a video and had forgotten that it was an older video, and I had forgotten that I had already uploaded it in the past. So it's like, oh wow, I accidentally double uploaded this. Which I don't recommend doing, but as left was an older video that just wasn't playing anymore, so that kind of worked out well anyway, because, if it doesn't play anymore, and you have a new audience that might not have had a chance to see it, you're constantly getting new subscribers or followers, then it kind of makes sense that an older video of yours that doesn't play anymore, you might want to share it again. So that makes sense. I don't know, but it's hard to say how this will affect things. But a lot of people, had their chance to try DTube, and it was gaining a lot of new content creators were moving over to it, and then they just kind of got bored and moved on. Maybe they'll go back again. It's hard to say. I don't know. And BitChute seems to be like I started with DTube like almost a year ago last winter, and BitChute was like half a year ago. BitChute has really cool infrastructure, but I kind of like how DTube works with cryptocurrency. They're both good, They're both good. Both their own thing. But YouTube is the omnipresent thing that everybody goes to. And plus, if you want to share stuff on Steam and Whale shares, places like that, YouTube videos automatically embed into the page, so that's also great too. Excuse me. And let's see, I need to refill my glass of Diet Cola or finish off this glass of energy drink. So the state of the internet is all the content creators that you might follow on YouTube. A lot of them are completely accepting of the fact that people don't want to support Patreon anymore, despite the fact a lot of them pretty much need Patreon, because it's their best way of getting funded for their content. And but like I said, I've never been that into Patreon, so I don't know. I don't know at all. But I find that kind of interesting. Basically, the internet is fucked. Mainly because of censorship, but it's like it'll survive. I mean, most of those content creators are still out there somewhere. Their diehard fans are going to follow them, and Sargon of Akkad isn't going anywhere. But when Patreon was like coming up for reasons to get rid of Sargon of Akkad, that was pretty lame. What I find funny is they talk about Sargon of Akkad like he's like an alt-right voice, and it's like, really? You think Sargon of Akkad is on the right? He's right-wing? It's like, you're gonna be fucking kidding me. He's not right-wing. He's kind of middle ground, left, but it's like, I think the most right-wing thing he did was he said he'd support Trump, which Well, I don't know. I mean, when Trump ran, on most issues, he ran to the left of Hillary Clinton, who happened to be in a left-wing party, but she ran on the right, to the right of, like the whole left-right thing's been really screwed around by that, but that's because when you're sold out to corporations, traditional left-right values don't mean a whole lot, so whatever. But anyway, that's my rambling on about the state of the internet. Something I thought was kind of interesting. I just before I went online, I saw a video by Mecha Random. Mecha Random, does she have any other numbers at the? I don't know. I didn't watch the whole thing because I was going to do something. I was actually just about to set up the camera to do this. Well, actually, it's not a camera; it's a cell phone. Uh, and set up to ramble on the internet. And she said there was like some good news and bad news about the new She-Ra series. The good news is they're not going to include He-Man in it, so they're not going to degrade He-Man by making him part of it. And the bad news was that it's coming back for season 2. I don't necessarily agree with that, the statement, but, she makes good videos, and my nose is itchy. But, no, she makes good videos, so I'm not complaining with that, but I thought that was kind of interesting, that bit of news being talked about. Because to me, the new She-Ra cartoon is something that's kind of like a little bit interesting, but not necessarily because of the cartoon itself, but actually the cartoon wasn't that bad when I actually saw it. Because right now you have a lot of like really bad reboots. Like Ghostbusters 2016 was an example of a bad reboot. Never should have been done. They should have made Ghostbusters 3. Instead, they made Ghostbusters: The Wacky Worlds. And it was just plain and simple a bad movie. I mean, it's the most blatant, straightforward, clear-cut example of a bad movie. But it has its defenders. Mostly people who just want an excuse to call people misogynist for not liking something with women in it. And it tanked at the box office. Now, granted, I think if Ghostbusters 2016 had come out half a decade earlier, around the time that those stupid Transformers movies started coming out, and that really stupid Star Trek movie came out, Star Trek 2009, I think it would have done better. But it also would have had a harder job because the culture wasn't built up to call people misogynists for not liking it. It wouldn't have had that trying to promote it. Because that's all it had going for it. A bunch of people who wanted to support it so that they could make a social issue out of it to call people sexist, misogynist, and racists. Because it was a bad movie, a bad idea, nothing Ghostbusters fans ever wanted. But it also came out at a time when people were getting less tolerant of bad reboots and bad follow-ups. Star Trek 2009, the one good thing about it was they found an interesting way to make it take place in an alternate timeline. The problem is it was written by idiots. I mean, the whole timeline was instigated by a supernova in the parallel universe destroying Romulus and everybody on Romulus, despite the fact a supernova is a natural space object, and the Romulans are a warp-capable civilization that should have been able to escape it because supernovas are pretty powerful, but they can't go faster than the speed of light, and warp-capable means you can travel faster than the speed of light, and I mean, I love the idea of using time travel to create a new parallel universe and creating offshoot timelines. I love that concept. I love time travel when it's done right, and they had a good idea for time travel. Everything else about that movie was just so fucking stupid. Absurdly, monstrously stupid. But it made a lot of money. It was the hell was promoted out of it. The person who made it, J.J. Abrams, knew how to market a dumb movie and make people go watch it. And it's probably because Star Trek Into Darkness was pretty bad too. I mean, it had them resurrecting Kirk using Khan's blood, but uh, other than that, point for point, Star Trek 2009 was probably the worst thing the franchise has ever done. I mean, the franchise had already had Spock's brain, that episode. It had the Threshold episode of Voyager. It had Voyager, Um, it had it. It had Star Trek 5, It had all these missteps, but nothing was written as dumbly as Star Trek 2009. Like every plot point, everything that happened in it was just so horribly dumb. But it was made in a way that I could see how it could distract dumb people. It's like, hey, some people in the audience are going to get excited by seeing a baby. Put a baby in at the start. Then shortly after, there's going to be some other people that are going to love cars. Going to want to see a car. All right, let's get Kirk into like some sort of car and make it some sort of car that'll really jerk off baby boomers and get the people who are in like the baby boomer cars, people who love like those types of cars, because that's a really big car culture. We'll see if we can't jerk off those people by putting them in some sort of an old Corvette, All right, then what? Well, let's see if we can't do some really painful, absurd humor that some dumb people in the audience will find funny, like have the guy's tongue swell up and have him not able to have that just go on forever. Give it painful Indiana Jones style timing. Fuck, those movies are hard to watch. Fuck Indiana Jones. Make this thing look like an absurd sci-fi Mountain Dew commercial on crack. This won't be that United States Mountain Dew that has caffeine added to it. No, it won't be that version of Mountain Dew. Some places they don't add caffeine. Like here, they don't add caffeine to most brands of Mountain Dew. It's like, no, we're going to have this Mountain Dew on crystal meth. We're going to make this look like a Mountain Dew commercial for Mountain Dew crystal meth version. We're going to have orbital skydiving, and we're going to make it look extreme. I remember that orbital skydiving scene, and I thought to myself, couldn't they just push a torpedo out of an airlock somehow and guide that thing down to it? They're going down there with explosives. I mean, isn't there a better way to blow up that thing? While they're skydiving down towards it, what if they took phasers? Phasers are supposed to be absurdly powerful. Couldn't they be, like, shooting at it? It's like, must be something about the explosives. It has to be, like, the controlled burst from the explosives somehow. There must be something special about the explosives. Then they go down on the thing, end up fighting Romulans on the fucking thing, lose their explosives, and they're like, well, we lost the explosives. Well, these Romulans were fighting had disruptor pistols, basically like phasers, only a slightly different type of energy discharge. Well, we'll just blast them with disruptors. So they could have been using the phasers all the fucking stupid. Anyway, they even managed to, how like sometimes they'll have somebody like running from an explosion, jumping at the last second and escaping a fireball explosion, sort of shit like that, the jumping from a fireball trope. Or like something flying out of an explosion at the last second, that trope, which can be pretty cool. Well, it was pretty lame in Star Trek 2009, but they even managed to end the movie with a lame version of that trope. God damn. That movie, it was like, how to make a movie, stuff in all these stupid little things that'll get people's attention, but still put it together in the dumbest way possible. I mean, the main protagonist, Kirk, he was basically flunking out of the academy. And at the end, he was a cadet who was flunking out of the academy. He wasn't commander. He wasn't lieutenant commander. He wasn't lieutenant rank. He wasn't even the rank of ensign. He was a cadet. And of all the cadets, he was a cadet that was on the verge. They were considering kicking him out of the academy. They awarded him command of the newly built Starship Enterprise to go out into space with phasers and photon torpedoes with no experience with a ship other than the fact he managed to kick a Romulan's ass before the Romulan destroyed Earth. The Romulan who destroyed Vulcan. Lovely. It's almost as dumb as when they just dumped him on an ice world. He gets chased by one space monster, that gets thrown away by another space monster, and then he just happens across the one person in the universe who can save him, who then chases that other space monster off with a torch. And then they happen across the one other person who can help save the universe. Scotty's just there. Of course, Scotty's there because Scotty is doing a shitty job there, because he got assigned a shitty job, because, hey, cool, they mentioned Admiral Archer. But turns out Scotty did live animal experimentations on Admiral Archer's beagle. So, yeah, if we have any common sense at this point, we should hate Scotty. They've just made us hate Scotty for doing live animal experimentations. Yeah, it's like, well, I know my transporter will work. I'm going to put the Admiral's beagle in it. What's this, Admiral? You want to ship me off to an ice world? Does that seem fair? Well, you might get your beagle back someday. That movie is so fucking stupid. Point by point by point. I cannot think of more stupid in a movie than Star Trek 2009. Even as bad as Ghostbusters 2016 was. They were working really hard to achieve stupid in Star Trek 2009. And Ghostbusters 2016 is a masterpiece of shit. But god fucking damn. So basically, when Ghostbusters 2016 came out, it was at a point in time when, like, the new Ninja Turtles movie flopped. The new Ghostbusters movie flopped. I think the Transformers movie that came out that year kind of flopped. Like, they weren't making the money that they were hoping for because people were sick of stupid, shitty movies. And I'm actually proud of the movie-going people. Like, I'm not a big fan of films, movies, theatrical presentations as a way to get media entertainment. I much prefer television. I much prefer novels, comic books, video games, and a television series over movies. The benefit to movies over, let's just say, television is movies usually have less censorship, less strict censorship. That's the benefit to movies. Other than that, movies are usually more of a generic minutia product to try to appeal to more people, to a lower common denominator, and less, to be less interesting to those who have followed and might have picked up on nuances. They're just the generic minutia of entertainment that overachieves in trying to make it accessible to any random person, and as a result ends up lacking that special little quality that can come from, trying to appeal to an audience. A proper audience, not just random people, but, an audience that would follow something and then come back for the sequel to see more, the continuation, So I don't have a lot of respect for the whole concept of theatrical films, movies of that sort. Don't have much respect for it at all to begin with. But that said, some of them can be good and some of them can be horrible. And Star Trek 2009, Ghostbusters 2016, those are examples of just horribly stupid movies. And people get sick of that. And in 2016, those movies started flopping. But I got to talk about this about She-Ra. The thing that interests me about She-Ra, though, is compare that to some of the new stuff. Like with Ghostbusters 2016, what promoted Ghostbusters 2016 was not Ghostbusters fans. It was not an appeal to Ghostbusters fans. It was an attempt to make a social issue out of a movie and promote it by attacking the people who might not be interested in it. Which in the case of Ghostbusters 2016, the people that weren't interested in it was Ghostbusters fans. Because it was not a Ghostbusters movie. It just wasn't. It failed as a Ghostbusters movie. I mean, it had the name. It had, backpacks that were capable of firing off a positively charged hydrogen plasma channel, but, proton packs. But Ghostbusters. Just wasn't. It wasn't Ghostbusters The Next Generation. It was like this alternate product that used the Ghostbusters name, which got the attention of Ghostbusters fans by having the name, disappointed and repelled them by, it's like, what? They're finally doing something with the intellectual property? Finally? And this is it? What the fuck is wrong with this? What the fuck is wrong with the people? What the fuck is wrong with Sony? They own the intellectual property to Ghostbusters. They're finally funding something Ghostbusters, and this is what they're giving us? Really? That's horrible. That's stupid. But of course, how do you counter that? Well, you call those people sexist. You know, they had female protagonists, so that's their chance to call the fans sexist. J.J. Abrams' crap Trek, when he came out with his shit Trek, it didn't really change the gender roles whatsoever. So if people complain about that, can't call them sexist, because, whatever. But then they came out with the new Star Wars movies. And they had a black guy other than Lando Calrissian. So, what's that, like the second black guy in the Star Wars universe that, because, the Star Wars movies had been pretty white in the past, which is not a good thing, but, it's kind of like, it's like, but, perfectly normal casting. Actually, his character is one of the few characters I like in the new Star Wars movies because he's a deserter. I can respect a deserter. Deserters risk their lives. It's more dangerous to try to escape a military organization that's brainwashed into fearing and hating and despising deserters. They would murder you for trying to escape your evil coworkers who are doing unethical things on behalf of the government. He's a deserter. He took risks to get away from his horrible coworkers. So I respect Finn. He has real guts. To me, that's a soldier I can respect, is Finn in Star Wars Episode 7. And then there's the new character of Rey, which people accuse of being a Mary Sue, which is, Star Wars itself is, but, she had the Force, whatever. But I didn't really dislike Rey. She didn't really do a whole lot to interest me, but I didn't really do a lot to hate her. Didn't really hate her. The portrayal of Han Solo I thought was pretty lame. But overall I just thought it was a stupid and bad movie. And at first I thought, well, you know what? Episode 1 was sillier than Episode 6. It was a continuation and getting even more sillier since Episode 1 was made after Episode 6. And I thought to myself, Episode 1, as silly as it is, that one's my least favorite. But, someone new likes me. Yay! It just popped up on the screen. I'll deal with that later. But no, Episode 7, it was just a stupid movie. It was like, some people criticized, well, it's just a rehash of Episode 4. It's like, yeah, just like Star Trek 2009, though, it's a dumb rehash of Episode 4. The Star Killer base, the Death Star, you could kind of like get behind the idea of this station doing what it was doing. The Star Killer base was like overblown and absurd. Oh, by the way, here's a fun thought. According to the laws of physics, the workings of space and time itself, the thing that causes gravity, the curvature of space-time itself, matter and energy are actually the same thing. So if you have enough energy in a single spot, it actually increases mass. It just takes an incredibly massive amount of energy. But if the Star Killer base sucked up all the energy in a star, it would have just taken on the mass of the star as well. Even if it completely converted that star into energy. That base not only would be holding back all the heat and energy of the star and whatever it was using to store that, it would also be dealing with the gravitational pull of that star inside of it. Just a thought. I do find it interesting, though, that now Star Star Trek and Star Wars have actually had, when you actually see like the science behind warp drive and hyperspace, they actually had more similar physics than you'd think, when you, at least with the old expanded universe. But this was the first time you ever see a weapon or anything that had gone through faster than like some form of faster like travel in Star Wars that didn't require going into a hyperspace state. With Star Trek's warp drive, you don't really entirely leave normal space because you're kind of being pushed a little bit into subspace, but you're also kind of warping space around you and altering the way space works. With hyperdrive, it's kind of a similar thing, but you change your relation to the normal dimensions of space and time, so you're kind of like outside the universe, but mass is still there. You can still technically collide with stuff. Like that was when they fleshed out like hyperdrive and the concepts behind it. It was like, I kind of like it when science fiction actually fleshes out what it's trying to portray, and I thought that was kind of interesting. But it just seemed kind of weird. Like, it seemed like... Well, Star Trek 2009 also had sloppy use of Star Trek physics, too. I mean, they shot, like, lightning beams across space faster than the speed of light. And then you had people on other planets watching it in real time as it destroyed other planets. I mean, that was bullshit. But then again, having Spock on some other planet in the Vulcan... I think it was still in the Vulcan system? Far enough away that the Enterprise would warp from Vulcan to get there for a little while. But Spock watching Vulcan being destroyed in real time from there, and it was J.J. Abrams' shitty science fiction. I hated J.J. Abrams' work back in the days of Alias, hated it in Lost, hated in Star Trek, hated in Star Wars. Fuck J.J. Abrams. Sorry, if you're not gonna think through this shit, don't fucking write it. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I thought Star Wars Episode 7 was stupid. Not as dumb as Star Trek 2009. Hey, they both had R2-D2 in them. I'm far more of a Star Trek fan than a Star Wars fan, but I gotta say, one of my favorite things in Star Trek 2009 was finding R2-D2. And I gotta say, J.J. Abrams' Star Trek movie was dumber than his Star Wars movie. Yeah. But anyway, basically, Star Wars, there were actually some people who were sexist and racist that had stupid things to say about Star Wars Episode 7. These people were a minority. Most people who talked about Star Wars Episode 7 either had legitimate criticisms with the fact that it was kind of a dumb movie, or that it was kind of a bad rehash of Episode 4, or most people actually seemed to be afraid to criticize it and just loved it because finally we're getting a sequel that's not a prequel. It's not a sequel to a prequel that's technically also a prequel to the original trilogy, where we're getting an actual sequel. Yay! It's like, yeah, but it's kind of a dumb movie. But it actually became part of that same social movement that the Ghostbusters movie was when people started to criticize it. Like, how dare you? There's a woman lead. You're just sexist for not liking it. That was the bullshit that they did to promote this movie. In Ghostbusters 2016, the new Star Wars movies became part of that. And both were horrible movies. Star Trek Discovery, a half-assed attempt at making a Star Trek TV show. And I will say this about Star Trek Discovery. It's bad, but if you take it and compare it to the new Star Wars movies, at least episodes 7 and 8, I don't really have a big problem with Rogue One. Rogue One, perfectly fine. I think most people liked Rogue One or were okay with it, and it also had a female protagonist. But then again, I never saw Solo. A lot of people hated Solo, and it had a male protagonist, but they still call those people sexist because they also hated episodes 7 and 8. Ugh. Fuck. Yeah, it's like, we hate the movie with the male lead. Well, you're sexist because you also hated the movie with the female lead. No, they're both stupid movies. No, you're just sexist. But wait, we hate the movie with the female lead and we hate the movie with the male lead. Isn't that equality? No, screw you. Yep, that's basically a crude and simple way of summing up the online argument. Okay, so then you have Star Trek Discovery, which is bad, but I'll give it credit. I don't consider it nearly as bad as Star Trek 2009 or Star Trek Into Darkness. It's good as Star Trek Beyond, which of the new Star Trek stuff is probably the best that they've done. Which actually comes out, as far as I'm concerned, Star Trek Beyond is okay. Maybe if I watched it a second time, I'd change my mind, but Star Trek Beyond's okay. Star Trek Into Darkness, crap. Star Trek 2009, unmitigated crap. Star Trek Discovery is pretty screwed up. But I don't think it's as bad as either of the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies. And I'd also take it over Star Wars Episode 7 or Star Wars Episode 9. It's bad, it deserves its criticism. Sometimes I think people just see it as bad and they criticize it for things that aren't a problem. But I also feel as though they overlook things that are problems because there's easier stuff to criticize. I don't know, but it's a screwed up show. It's Star Trek Discovery's pretty screwed up. And then along comes the She-Ra cartoon, which people immediately know is going to be part of this big social media movement because they made a big deal about how the show is going to be progressive. It's going to be LGBT friendly media. It's going to be pro-female protagonist. And people get the impression, oh no, this is going to be more of what they're doing with Star Wars and Star Trek and Ghostbusters, where they're just going to give us stupid shit and they're not going to care about the quality. Then they're going to call people sexist when they have complaints. And that's what that was the general assumption. But there was also a secondary thing on where people were also making crappy cartoons, and that when people were criticizing them, because apparently you're not allowed to be a critic anymore, they were also part of that because it had nothing to do with these social issues, but they also came out with a new Ninja Turtles cartoon, which had some, shall I say, weird choices for developing the series. And while I don't think the new Ninja Turtles cartoon is horrible, it's definitely not the best version of Ninja Turtles, that's for sure. Not the worst, but there's been some pretty bad versions of Ninja Turtles over the years. Not the best, not the worst. You know, you can watch it and find entertainment value in it. It's not where I would have taken the franchise, but, whatever. And it looked bad. The animation style, a lot of people weren't happy with that, and, that's a legitimate criticism. The one that actually became the most argument was the even worse-looking Thundercats cartoon, but then I actually saw a lot of people trying to defend, shitty animation styles. Well, Dexter's Laboratory was great, but it had this animation style, and don't these types of cartoons look better because of their crude and simple drawings? And it's no, it worked for Dexter's Laboratory. It works for the Flintstones. That doesn't make it better, because the new Thundercats cartoon, what was it, Thundercats Roar? That show, it just looks bad. The 80s cartoon, they were drawn great. The characters were like a cartoon character often is, bright and colorful, but at the same time realistically proportioned. And then the new Thundercats look like scribbles. Look like just somebody scribbled a mess on a page and turned it into a cartoon, And then along comes She-Ra. Now, She-Ra, as far as I'm concerned, the animation style of it is better than either the Ninja Turtles or the new Thundercats cartoon. Far better art direction with that. Far better visual choice. But it's not really perfect. Like some people say, in this angle the characters look cross-eyed. It's yeah, that happens in cartoons. This character, the character should be taller, and this character, they're shorter, and, it's yeah, mistakes like that happen, It's not perfect animation. But I will say, the new She-Ra cartoon, I didn't think it looked bad. Did it look as good as the original? Not really. The original wasn't perfect, but, this new one's not bad. And that's a legitimate criticism, though. You don't like the animation style, that's a legitimate criticism to me. Personally, I think the original She-Ra looked better. I think Sailor Moon looks better. This cartoon kind of reminds me of, never really watched it, but I've seen it on. Was it called Totally Spies or Incredibly Spies? I think it's Totally. Whatever that show. I think there were other shows that had that animation style too, but I've seen a few cartoons that had a certain animation style, and I think they were either animated in Europe, possibly here in Canada, or possibly the United States. I'm not really sure where, but I've seen them animated. But they're animated in a style that is inspired by traditional North American and European animation. Has that kind of traditional look. Proportions similar to you'd see in like Masters of the Universe or the real Ghostbusters or Thundercats, like a realistic human proportions. That combined with kind of like the anime style, the Japanese animation, the manga style proportions, the different sized eyes and the different overall shapes that can be a little bit more expressive, but still kind of represent a human shape in very specific form. It's not really squash and stretch. Some cartoons will just have like the wide round eyes and simple shapes and that really stretch and warp with emotions a lot. But with Japanese animation, you do have a certain amount of distortion for expression, but at the same time, you also have very specific rules to make it a physical representation that is very exact, very precise, even if it is a little distorted for perspective. They take those two different styles and merged. Like, I've seen that done. I think Totally Spies was the name of the cartoon that I'll sometimes see on that does that. But it reminded me of that, which isn't a bad look in my opinion. It's just not as good as the traditional Japanese animation or anime, or in comic book form manga. When they draw like that actual shape and style that the characters are often drawn in shows like, for example, Sailor Moon or Macross. I technically do prefer the Japanese anime look. And I also prefer the North American look. Like, it's a merger of the two that I don't find as good as either. And that's really what I feel they did with the She-Ra Princess of Power cartoon. And while I don't think it's as good as traditional North American or traditional Japanese animation, not as good as either, it is a merger of them both and also good. Not my preference, but not that far from it. Not that far from two different things that I would prefer. Kind of meeting them in the middle. I don't feel it's as good as one or the other, but it's fine, And yeah, they didn't do it perfect. There's sometimes sizes and perspectives off a bit, but in a cartoon, that's nothing too unusual. It's not perfect, but it is bright, colorful, vibrant, distinct, and I think it looks fine. But if you don't like the She-Ra cartoon, that's a legitimate concern. But of course, there became this immediate online argument about She-Ra even before it came out, because it appeared as though She-Ra was going to be another one of those products. It was just written stupid. It was just this dumb generic thing to push a social agenda and possibly demonize its critics to make people feel important and promote a show without worrying about taking the time to make the show good. That's what it kind of looked like it was going to be. I totally get and understand why some people would make that assumption. Based on other things, like the new Star Trek movie, the new Star Trek TV show, and the new Star Wars movies, the Ghostbusters movies. That's been like a social issue thing that's been going on using media, But I gotta say, when people argued over the She-Ra cartoon, they were arguing over nothing. Over nothing. I actually watched the show. I was curious. And when people go on like this as an affront to She-Ra as well as the Masters of the Universe series that was a spin-off from, it's like, no, it's not that bad. It's actually not that bad. It's different. It's more of a coming-of-age story, so the characters look younger, technically more androgynous. There's more variety in body shapes, forms, and racial characteristics. Everything's a little bit more diverse. That's not surprising. You shouldn't really find that uncommon. And actually, one of the reasons why Masters of the Universe, and for that matter, the She-Ra cartoons in the past, everybody looked the same was because it was easier to animate characters that way. They could recycle, like, frames of animation and just paint the colors a little bit different and shit like that. And, you know, it made things easier. And people think of Filmation as being a studio that really cheaped out by doing that. Actually, no, Filmation's animation was more expensive than average because, well, they did recycle frames of animation in that way. It was a time and cost cutting method as well, too. They didn't really outsource the animation to cheaper production companies. So that was a large reason of why they did as much of that as they did back in the Filmation days. When I watched the She-Ra cartoon, the new one, as for how good or bad it is, well, She-Ra always was a spin-off of Masters of the Universe. How does it compare to the original Masters of the Universe cartoon? I'd say the original Masters of the Universe cartoon was better. But the She-Ra spin-off of Masters of the Universe had some great episodes. It could go some dark places, some fascinating places. It could be pretty serious. But the truth is, if you watch it, you can realize that the writers of the show, they probably got in trouble for using too much violence and controversial content that might scare children. You can tell that they softened She-Ra down a lot compared to Masters of the Universe. I mean, I remember reading about there were controversies behind the scene. In this episode, Skeletor seemed too evil. Well, we've already made the episode. All right, we got to soften him down for the next episode. Okay, fine. You know, Skeletor, you know, there was like some arguments behind the scene on how evil Skeletor could be. Which is stupid. He's a bad guy. They're fighting against him. Yes, he should be evil. Otherwise, you're trivializing. I mispronounced that, but whatever. You're downplaying, like you're having characters fighting, and you're downplaying the drama that leads up to the fight in a kid's cartoon. So basically, the stakes leading up to a conflict have just been lowered, rather than being, you know, desperately important. We have to save the world. It's become, you know, it's like, well, he's not really that evil, but we're gonna go punch him anyway. You know, it's like, that's not a good message. You know, watering down the cartoons, taking the drama out of them, weakens them, and it's not necessarily a better message, you know. But, you know, there was, like, some issues. I remember reading about that behind the scenes where it was like, well, you know, Skeletor was too evil in that episode. Yeah, he's supposed to be evil. Fuck off. You know? But, so, when you have Hordak in, like, the She-Ra cartoon, you have somebody who... he did slapstick crap to his own men to make him look evil, but it was still slapstick crap. I mean, as a kid, I liked Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash. You know, those were characters I technically liked, but I'd never want to watch Super Friends. If it was on, I didn't really have access to channels that had it, but the few times I'd seen it, it wasn't anything that I thought, oh, I want to see more of that. Why? Because it's watered down bullshit. And that's what She-Ra was. I mean, Hordak was supposed to be this evil villain, and in one episode he gets out the laser bubble blaster. What the fuck? You know, his idea of berating his minions underneath him might be like throwing a pie in their face. I mean, I like the Smurfs. I get why it would be annoying to live with Jokey Smurf. You remember Jokey Smurf? It's kind of like, but at the same time, you know, you have an evil empire. You don't have them run by Jokey Smurf, you know? It was like, you know, it's like you could substitute Hordak with Jokey Smurf. Except I think Jokey Smurf would be a little bit more menacing with his exploding presence. You know, even though it never really killed anybody, just left them covered in soot, it still is a little more imposing than the shit Hordak did. Ugh. You know, so the She-Ra cartoon, it's not something I look back with being impressed. Impressed by moments, certain episodes that were written better than other episodes, yeah. But does it live up to Masters of the Universe? Sorry, no. And as a kid, I was actually pretty excited for this new cartoon that was a spin-off of Masters of the Universe. Expanding the Masters of the Universe multiverse. because it actually took it place in a parallel universe to Masters of the Universe, but they were connected through interdimensional travel. Because remember, Hordak came from a different universe than He-Man and She-Ra, but he abducted She-Ra, or Princess Adora, as a daughter. And that's also where Skeletor came from, because he was one of Hordak's minions who got lost and abandoned on Eternia during that whole incident. But that's part of Masters of the Universe mythos. But to me, She-Ra was a step down from Masters of the Universe. It just was. You watch the stories, you realize this ain't Masters of the Universe. This is not the same really interesting with like science fiction fantasy stories with consequences. This is more watered down Super Friends bullshit. So the new She-Ra cartoon, I do feel, is better than the old She-Ra cartoon. And She-Ra wasn't the only spin-off of Masters of the Universe. There was a second one called The New Adventures of He-Man. That one, thankfully, was more serious than the She-Ra cartoon, but it was also more boring than the She-Ra cartoon. It's interesting because of how the episodes interconnected, but on their own, each individual episode of The New Adventures of He-Man was pretty drowsy, sleep-inducing. You know, it wasn't that exciting of a show. And again, the new She-Ra cartoon is better than that, which isn't a big achievement, but I think it was better than either spin-off of the original Masters of the Universe. But then again, the Masters of the Universe reboot of it was either 2002 or 2003. That Masters of the Universe series, I think, is a better reboot than the current She-Ra reboot. But that reboot was actually a really amazing cartoon show. It wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good, you know? And, it was a really good reboot of Masters of the Universe. And the She-Ra cartoon, not better than that. But not being better than that is not an insult. And when I watched the new She-Ra cartoon, I was like, not bad, not great, but not bad. You know, when you watch the first few episodes, you watch a little bit more, and by the end of it, I actually liked it. So, while I do definitely agree that there's been a lot of crappy media that's come out in the last little bit, and often when they have the chance to pull the card, oh, you don't like this, you're just sexist or racist, you know, that has happened a lot, and it's bullshit, you know, liking or disliking a bad movie is not the difference in being racist or sexist. I mean, a bad movie's a bad movie, a bad TV show's a bad TV show. But the She-Ra cartoon, I didn't think was bad. I actually thought it was good. I watched it, I thought to myself, you know what? They make season 2, I will deliberately watch it. They don't make season 2, I won't feel like I missed a whole lot, because, well, I thought the show was good enough to watch. You know, I didn't think, you know, I really got to see more. You know, I kind of want to see more. But, you know, if it failed to achieve a second season, fine. You know, big deal. You know, it's not the best thing ever, but you know what? If it failed to achieve a second season, I would be a little bit disappointed because I watched it, got some enjoyment out of it, and thought, you know, I definitely wouldn't mind watching more of this. So, the She-Ra cartoon getting a second season, I feel is a good thing. And yeah, it's not a bad show, as far as I'm concerned. It starts off a little bit weak for so many episodes, but it's not bad. It's not perfect, but no past incarnation of She-Ra or any other Masters of the Universe spin-off and or Masters of the Universe reboot, you know, none of that has ever been perfect. You know, so, well, if somebody doesn't like the animation style or they didn't like this or that, well, that's fine. People can have their opinions. But I don't view this as part of that whole, you know, just putting out crap for the sake of crap and then finding any excuse to hate the fans. That said, the show has picked up its share of bullshit online arguments over social issues. For example, some people have said, this show is a great example
for representation, everything from intersectional feminism to, I don't know, whatever social issue you want to come up with. You know, um, that's like, and you watch the show and it's like, what, you making out like this, like is some sort of step forward, amazing representation? It's like, no, it's just perfectly fine. A variety of human races appear to be represented, variety of human different body shapes, a lot of interesting female protagonists, all good. Is it anything unique or outstanding? No, it's been done before. They made out like it's like some sort of great representation for LGBT people. LGBTQ, what did I leave out? I'm not good with acronyms. Letters of the alphabet, numbers, and etc., etc. But anyway, no, like it's like some sort of special representation for, gay rights and stuff like that. It's like, really? Where do you get that from? Like, people have been trying to read a lot out of it. And like I saw like one crazy ass article going on about how, it's like some great representation for that. I'd be like, good, not a bad idea. I mean, the guys at Filmation, they deliberately made Masters of the Universe and She-Ra, those characters, the worlds, the cartoons themselves, they deliberately made them as gay as possible. What's that? A new video from Secular Talk. Okay, that's interesting. I'll watch it later. They deliberately made those shows as gay as possible. There's been people who worked at Filmation that have admitted that, Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that. I think that's great. But when they talk about like there's like some sort of extra special representation, most of the characters in the show seem to be heterosexual. I haven't really seen a lot of great representation of alternate relationships. I think there was some sort of line that referenced somebody having two dads. I think that line was in there somewhere. Was it? Or maybe I'm confused. I'm not sure. But the thing is, one idle line here and there doesn't really mean a whole lot, especially today. I mean, it's like, so what? They talked about how Adora and Catra, when you see the episode when they're at that prom, they called it Princess Prom or some bullshit like that, yeah. When they're in the Princess Prom together, you're going to be really pulling for Team Adora, Catra, or some article like that going on about how, it was like this, such a progressive movement where they're finally showing, some sort of same-sex relationship in a cartoon. I actually watched the episode. And it's like, really? Really? You get that from that episode? If you consider that to be some sort of improvement in representation of same-sex relationships, you get pretty low standards, because that was pretty much nothing special. What they did was they danced together, and not really very romantically. They were at a dance, the music started up, one character mistrusts the other, and, when the music started up, they blended in by starting to dance. And the character that was the bad guy, was, I forget what she said, basically scoffed the whole thing off. And Adora started dancing, when they started dancing, the Adora's dancing, however she's dancing, and she turns and dances with somebody else who has something to tell her about how somebody has gone missing. Then she turns and is dancing with somebody else who tells her that somebody else has gone missing or something else bad has happened. Then she turns back to Catra, then Catra explains to her. That's like, you know what? I really got what I wanted all along, was the two dads together. I kept you distracted while her ally went and fucked everything up big time. So basically, she was keeping Adora distracted because she knew Adora was going to follow her around. Her other friend managed to slip away from the people that were following her, and things started exploding. So other than the fact they danced together, that wasn't too romantic. And then there's a moment later where one of them's about to fall, and rather than grab the person's arm, they put her arm around her and then pulled her back. But if that's, they made out like that's some sort of big romantic moment, but if The episode was actually full of anger, spite, and hate, and anger over betrayal, but it wasn't even a romantic betrayal. When you follow the characters, they have an interesting relationship, but it more borders on the lines of it would almost be incestuous because they kind of established they knew each other so long as children. They're basically like family, and one of them was like protecting them from other horrible people, and they kind of bonded over common enemies like abuse from what's her name, Shadow Weaver, um, shit like that, and if that's like romantic coming off as like representing some sort of romance between same-sex characters, I gotta say you're grasping at straws. If that's representation of any sort of relationship, I'd say it's bad representation of a relationship. So when they make out like this is like some sort of progressive thing, with great representation of LGBTQ relations, no, 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 there's like it's not doing anything special. If they want to give really good representation of something along that lines, they should start with an actual relationship. And if there's like even the possibility of sexual tension, it might be there, but there's like so much other story and backstory behind the characters that isn't remotely romantic or sexual that it's like they're drawing at straws. But then that gets a reaction from other people that haven't watched the episode, freaking out. It's like, well, it's one thing if they have LGBTQ characters, but they're sexualizing a child's program. This program's supposed to be acceptable for children. And it's like, I'm not really sure what age it's really for. Like, when you have like stuff like this, you really should aim it for all ages, because a title like that's going to draw the attention of fans from the original show in the 80s, as well as you want it to be kind of acceptable for children, new children as well. You kind of want to, you kind of want to cover both bases, At least if you're smart about how you're producing the show, you want to do that. But cartoons have had romance always. One of my favorite examples, the real Ghostbusters, had Janine lusting over Egon on a regular basis. It wasn't absurdly sexual because they didn't show them fucking, and just because they have two characters in a romance, doesn't mean they're going to be showing them fucking. So when people overreact to that, it's like, yeah, maybe you're being kind of homophobic because you're saying that because it's a same-sex romance or overly sexualizing something. Trying to think of other cartoons. The Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon from the 1990s, the Saturday morning one, it was clear that there was like an attraction between Sonic the Hedgehog and the Princess Sally character. They didn't show them fucking. I think there's a lot of fan art on DeviantArt that probably shows them. Actually, I think they probably have them fucking Amy Rose more than Sally. But it's like they have all sorts of cartoons where one character is attracted to another. They don't call them overly sexualized. Those fucking Looney Tunes cartoons with Pepe Le Pew. Actually, that might be. Pepe Le Pew is pretty creepy, getting in people's personal space. That one was kind of bad, but that's still different. It's not overly sexualized. They're basically he's just a creepy fucker. But it's like no. It's like no. First off, even if they have like a romance in a cartoon, doesn't mean it's being overly sexualized. That said, if you think this cartoon is being overly sexualized, you obviously haven't watched the damn thing. It's not. It's just not. And it's not really representing anything other than most of the characters in it seem heterosexual. I think there's one character, the guy that's kind of like a pirate. I've heard some people comment on it that he's like a gay stereotype, so they think he's gay, but he's trying to cover it up by acting like he's attracted to one of the female characters. To which I'd say it's like, okay, then that's not progressive. If the one gay character they have is basically in the closet and compensating for it, then that's not a very progressive world.
All right. New video from Lore Reloaded. What's that one? Something about the Prime Directive. All right.
But no, it's like, so basically you'd see people arguing online about nothing. Fucking nothing. That's what the She-Ra cartoon has basically become to be. It's actually kind of a good cartoon. It's not that bad. I found the good guys interesting. I found the bad guys interesting. Hordak did not come off as like an absurdly pathetic villain who, I'll fire on them with the laser bubble blaster. He actually came off as a competent evil leader whom they do not overuse. Shadow Weaver comes off as an evil controlling bitch, which is actually made for interesting storytelling. She's the one that adopted Adora and wanted Adora to basically be her apprentice. Views Adora as a child in a very evil, oppressive, controlling way. And was very abusive towards Adora's friend Catra. Which, as the storyline moves on, when you actually see Catra confronting and fighting Shadow Weaver, it's like, yeah, kick that bitch's ass. Like, they built up a certain level of hatred between the characters, made it interesting in a way that the audience can find it sympathetic, especially towards Catra. And it's like, yeah, you're rooting for Catra to kick that fucker's ass when it actually comes down to a fight. And Hordak sits back and does almost nothing other than he supports Catra because it's like Catra was getting results and Shadow Weaver was obsessing over Adora. Whom, again, not a romantic relationship. Shadow Weaver was like, an obsessed parent. An abusive, horrific, obsessed, controlling parent. On the side of evil. And I actually, as I watched through the show, like I said, not totally blown away by it, not thinking, oh, I just gotta see next season. But I watched it, I'm like, you know what? Some really good moments. I do kind of hope they release season 2. If they don't, if it's just a one-season deal, I'm like, all right, fine. But, I will deliberately watch season 2. That's basically how I would rate the show. Good or bad? Good enough. If they make season 2, I will watch it, and not just as a curiosity. Why am I going to watch season 2 of Star Trek Discovery? Because for years I've loved Star Trek. And it's a curiosity to me. Now, when they do little continuity flubs in Star Trek Discovery, they do things that don't fit the appropriate timeline they're in, and then people get upset when they mention this or they mention that because they think they're going to screw everything up. To me, Star Trek Discovery is so bad. At this point, I don't...
Oh, reconnected?
Oh, looks like we reconnected. All right, there was some technical issues over there. I think I fixed them.
Ah, yeah. I have no idea how the video will handle that disconnection, if there'll be a period of dead air, or if... it doesn't matter. Nobody's watching anyway. But, that would have been a bad point to end on. So I'm glad I'll get a better chance to finish this. Just basically comparing She-Ra, the new cartoon show, to Star Trek Discovery. With She-Ra, I watched it, found it likable, found the characters interesting in its own cartoonish way. I compare that to Star Trek Discovery. I watched Star Trek Discovery because it's Star Trek. They stuck the Star Trek name on it anyway. CBS. Anyway, but no. I'm going to watch Star Trek Discovery Season 2. Coming back for Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery as a curiosity. Not because I like the show, but because it's Star Trek. And I like Star Trek the original series. I love Star Trek the Next Generation. I love Deep Space Nine almost as much as Next Generation. I like Star Trek Voyager almost as much as the original series,
I love Star Trek Enterprise. To this day, it's still my favorite television show. You know, I followed Star Trek, loved the novels, you know, uh, and yeah, I mean, comics, novels, video games. If it's Star Trek, there's a reason for me to take a look. With Star Trek Discovery, Season 1 has left me looking forward to checking out Season 2, not because it's good, but as a curiosity. You see, with Star Trek Discovery, a lot of people complain about the stuff they screwed up, and then when they mention something new, they'll complain, oh, they screwed this up. But for me, it's crossed a point. With the new Star Trek Discovery, as well as the new Star Trek movies, which the Star Trek movies take place in a parallel timeline, but it's still a Star Trek timeline, so, you know, with this new stuff, as far as I'm concerned, they could the next episode could claim that the warp drive is run on candy corn. And I'd be like, whatever, that's pretty fucking stupid, but hey, not surprising for Star Trek Discovery. When they start up the spore drive, I think the sound effect should be the sound effect from Super Mario Brothers when Mario picks up the mushroom, you know, and then grows a few sizes larger, you know. That's what I think should be the sound effect for kicking in the spore drive in Star Trek Discovery. I say that not because I love Star Trek Discovery. Obviously, I'm mocking Star Trek Discovery. So, yeah, I want to see Star Trek Discovery Season 2. It's out of curiosity, because I've been a long-time Star Trek fan, and I don't respect what they're doing with the show. I don't think it's a good move, but I don't really see a lot of point in complaining about it, because they've already broke the standard to the point where it's like, yeah, whatever. At this point, it doesn't matter, you know. It's screwed too far for me to say, well, I'm outraged because they ruined another thing. It's like, no, they've gone to a bad place. The best you can do is hope that the next series, I hope that the next Star Trek show is a partial reboot and keeps everything that's not Star Trek Discovery. Maybe find a way to get rid of the J.J. Abrams movies. Some people would say, oh, you don't need to. They're in a parallel timeline. Yeah, they're in a separate timeline, but they're canonically a parallel timeline, and the first two are just so dumb. So I actually have less trouble with Discovery than Star Trek 2009. But Star Trek Discovery doesn't really fit the Star Trek universe either, you know. So I'll watch Star Trek Discovery as a curiosity because I'm a longtime Star Trek fan. I'll watch the She-Ra Season 2 because I thought Season 1 was good enough to make me think, it's worth checking out again. That's my thoughts on the new She-Ra show. I don't think it's the most amazing thing ever, but I actually think it was good. You know, and no big deal. When people make out like, worst thing ever, it's like, well, the animation's not perfect. It's not my absolute favorite style, but it's not bad. There's a lot of cartoons worse. Actually, I could think of other styles of animation I would prefer, including the original She-Ra, including outright anime like Sailor Moon. But look at all the cartoons that are out there that have crappier animation. Most actually do. There was a point where most cartoons decided, we're just going to get stylized. We don't care what this shit looks like, and it's going to be bad. That's how I feel about a lot of cartoons now, anyway. So, and animation is just one part of it, and yeah. And when people make out like, oh, they're over sexualizing a cartoon show, it's like, no, romance in cartoons is nothing new. And people are like, oh, it's a great progressive movement forward with representation of this and that. It's like, no, they could do more. They could do more. Do they have to do more? No. But they could be doing less, you know. But if they really want to go out of their way to be a great representation of perhaps well, LGBTQ relationships and stuff like that, like some people are making out like it's a great representation of, then I'm like, no, they're not really doing a whole lot in that category. I think they're, like I said earlier, assuming that that part wasn't lost when I lost internet connection, I think they referenced one character had two dads. And any reference to same sex relationships between the characters is definitely overhyped. Especially when they talk about characters who have an emotional connection that's more of a family connection. If they turned it, I mean, they could turn it into a romantic attraction because they're not biologically family, but it would actually feel like their connection would almost feel a little bit incestuous, just the way they were raised together. Just, I don't know, it just doesn't really work for me. But they could put, you know, same sex relationships in the show. They could do that. They're not, you know, other than maybe some hinting references, they're not doing a whole lot in that category. So it's like, no, it's not really a great step forward for that. And if you have problems with that, well, then the people who are arguing like it's so horrible that they're doing that, there's pretty much nothing in there. I mean, you're getting upset about nothing. You're praising nothing. You're getting upset about nothing. It's like a whole online argument about, you know, it'd be like, you know, it's like a religious argument. It's like two religious groups arguing over who has the better imaginary sky daddy, who they pretend somehow created the space-time continuum, but for some reason needs no origin story themselves. You know, it's like you're arguing over, it's a fight you're making up. You know, meanwhile in real life goes on. You know, people arguing over the She-Ra cartoon. Okay, fine, but there's also the She-Ra cartoon. You could watch the actual thing. Yeah. Whatever. So, should I end this video now? Yeah, probably. Yeah, well, I talked about the She-Ra cartoon because I saw some news about somebody talking about the She-Ra cartoon just before I went online, and yeah, and I talked about the state of the internet, which a little concerning. I mean, there's various content creators online that I watch, and you know, Patreon does appear to have become an unacceptable force. The fact that PayPal has decided that some people just don't deserve to use money and they're the easiest way to, you know, deal with money online, that's a bit concerning. Yeah, that's the state of things. So, should I end this video? Is there anything left for me to say? Trying to think if there's anything else I could squeeze into this to make like a little mini video in this overall live stream, and then maybe later edit that into a video in and of itself. You know, this is my chance to, this is my time to, you know, I don't have to worry about how much storage space I have on my camera. Yeah, my camera. I have other cameras. They're generally not in very good shape. There's a little rubber band on it, which is holding the battery door closed. Yeah. Oh yeah. My high-tech, sophisticated recording equipment. And actually, this is probably pretty blurry going onto the internet because of my crummy internet connection. Well, I recently, yeah, this is worth discussing. I recently rewatched some of Star Trek Discovery, mentioning Star Trek Discovery, which I don't have a very positive opinion of. Yeah, I should end this video soon, though. My opinion of Star Trek Discovery when I rewatched it, knowing the things that annoyed me the first time I watched it, I didn't have as strong of a negative reaction the second time I saw it. That's because I already knew what to expect. So, I don't know. There's the complaints people have about it. I think the Klingon War at the exact time it took place is completely inappropriate. If you look at the Klingon War in Episode 1, if it had ended quickly without devastating the Federation, then I think that would be a perfectly fine way to lead into Star Trek the original series. A very brief war that didn't, involve losing a large portion of the Federation. That would have been fine. A major, devastating conflict that close to the events of the original series, I have a problem with that, I have no problem with cloaking devices being used at that time. I do have problems with the Klingons having cloaking devices at that time. Like, people talk about, there's like an argument online, oh, the Suliban shouldn't have cloaking devices because nobody ever saw a cloaking device at that time. And I'm like, no, that's not what was said in the original series episode. The original series episode that introduced the cloaking device, the crew of the Enterprise spent most of their time shitting themselves over the devastating force of that amazing plasma torpedo. They made a reference to, how did they disappear like that? Cloaking is actually possible with the selective bending of light, but the power consumption is enormous, like they talked like they knew how to do it. It's just they never thought anybody would do it. Okay. The Romulans are an enemy that they haven't seen in a long time, but they view them as a contemporary. They were surprised that the Romulan cloaked, which doesn't mean the Suliban couldn't have had a cloak. In fact, the Suliban cloaking device... Is one of the cats getting sick? Oh, one of the cats is getting sick. Okay. Yeah, I don't even want to watch that. Yeah. But no, the Suliban cloaking device... Personally, I think if the Suliban cloaked in front of Kirk's ship, I don't think it would disappear. Not unless somebody was looking out a window. It's like... They're mentioning the window. That's another issue when they have those windows in the Discovery starships instead of a view screen. But just stupid. But no, the Suliban cloaking technology, I don't think is comparable to a Romulan cloaking technology. Hell, in the episode that introduced the Suliban, the Earth Starfleet, it's before the Federation, could follow the Suliban ships, could follow their warp trail, which was established something that would easily be done by Vulcan sensors at the time. The Suliban cloak might not have even worked on a Vulcan ship. So I'm not like, wow, this is like something that people are going to be thinking about this the next time they see a ship disappear and wonder why it disappeared. Now, the fact that a Romulan ship did that in a Season 2 episode of Enterprise is a bit of a stretch that I didn't really like very much. But again, this was probably just a variation of the Suliban cloak they got their hands on, and they've abandoned that by Season 4 when those cloaks were no longer an option. So probably Andorian and Vulcan sensors, this cloak probably wouldn't work against them. So, I just don't really see that as a canonical problem. That's something, 100 years before the original series would have changed that line of dialogue, when that line of dialogue just indicated that Kirk and Spock were surprised that, a ship cloaked or a ship disappeared. To me, it's just not a big deal. That said, giving the Klingons a cloaking device, I guess, could be solved if the Klingon cloaking device was completely defeated. So in a way, I guess when they figured out how to scan through the Klingon cloaking device, that solved things, because then in the future when Romulans disappear, they actually would question how the Romulans would disappear, because then it would be a different cloaking technology, the likes of which they have never seen before, because their sensors can defeat any... I don't know. But I just... That close to the original series, I would not have given the Klingons that cloaking technology. Not unless I made it rare to one or two Klingon ships, and then once it was destroyed, nobody expected to see it anytime soon. You know, if it was something that wasn't easily reproducible, maybe, but even then, no, I just wouldn't have done that. I just didn't think that was a great idea for Discovery to give the Klingons a cloaking device that advanced that early, that at that time. I thought it was a bad idea, but I don't view that as continuity wrecking. I view that as a bit of a stretch. What I do view as overboard was when they lost what was it, 20% of the Federation and a third of Starfleet forces to the Klingons. It's that pretty fucks up not the whole quadrant, but the local space. That really kind of changes the whole political landscape of the local galaxy in a way that I don't think is very fitting for Star Trek: The Original Series, where they were supposedly just leading up to going from a Cold War state to a hot war. It gives them a reason to fight. It just doesn't really feel like it matches the conflict they had. That said, I suppose it doesn't completely violate it, but I don't think that was a good idea. That's what I have. I have a bigger issue with the Klingon Federation War than the Klingon cloaking device, especially considering they completely defeated the Klingon cloaking device. The events as portrayed in the episodes, that's something I have a big problem with, that I felt the writing was pretty screwed up. Not as bad as Star Trek 2009, but I have problems with that. Let's see, is anything going on outside? I thought I heard something. Nope. Must have been one of the neighbors' vehicles. I don't think there's anything supposed to be delivered today or anything like that. But anyway, there's little things that are that push the limit, and then there's just bad writing. And the individual episodes I felt have bad writing. And like I said, I don't like the idea of how the Klingon War went. I don't think that works very well with the original series. The Klingons, the easiest way to explain the Klingons in this is if it is a parallel universe. Personally, I think the best way... if CBS wants to treat this like it's a prime timeline, I think they should treat it like it's an alternate prime timeline. But somehow the timeline was split. I don't know, maybe the temporal Cold War. Maybe that weird Nazi alien went back into the past and altered Klingon evolution. Because the Klingons, the new Kling orcs, kind of look like the Nazi species that was tampering with time, in Star Trek Enterprise. And at the end of the episode, when they got rid of him, when they defeated him, he kind of screamed no as he was stuck in the time portal as it was being destroyed. Well, maybe he went to a parallel version of Cronus, and tempered with evolution there, but because it took him out of the regular timeline, resolved everything in Archer's timeline. But that could work. That could work. Could also explain why the Suliban, although Archer kind of solved the whole, Archer kind of proved to the Klingons that the Suliban were trying to make the Klingon houses fight each other in the first episode of Enterprise, and Discovery has referenced that also happened in their timeline. At least Archer had went to Cronus in the NX-01, but perhaps uncovering that information, maybe there was more tampering with the Klingons in that timeline, causing the houses to be even more divided, causing the uprising of Takuma, or whatever his name was, who reunited the Klingons in a war against the Federation. Maybe that could be another shuffled event. Use the temporal Cold War to split the timeline, something like that. Maybe Discovery could take place in a variation of the timeline where Picard hadn't gone back in time and altered First Contact, the Borg and Picard. Maybe that could be another difference in the timeline, that's a version of the timeline that was sheltered from that change. I don't know. You got a series of time travel and paradoxes, creating new timelines. I don't know. There's stupid little things you could come up with that might be ways to excuse it and make it a new alternate prime timeline, because CBS wants to call it the prime timeline. Fine, let them call it the prime timeline. To me, it's just not the proper Star Trek timeline. To me, it just doesn't work very well as a sequel to Enterprise, doesn't work well as a prequel to the original series, nor as a prequel to Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, but whatever. But no, I mean, a lot of people complained about the holograms in Discovery. I don't have an issue with them having that technology. I just have an issue with how they use it. Like, the ability to communicate with holograms. They were trying to set that up in Deep Space Nine like it was a new thing. But to me, when they did it in Deep Space Nine, I didn't think they were incapable of doing it prior to that. I just think they didn't normally do it prior to that. Because really, the stupid semi-transparent holograms that they have in Discovery, they should have been able to do that, and I mean capable of doing that prior to Star Trek Enterprise. Like, that's not a great advancement in technology. It just means they have holograms and they can communicate, you know. I just think it's aesthetically awkward, so I don't think they should do it. So I don't view it as an error in the timeline that they're doing this, that they're somehow introducing a technology too early. It's like, no, this isn't comparable to the holodecks of the Next Generation or the Doctor in Voyager. It's not remotely comparable to that. It's just, it seems like a technology they should be capable of doing long before the original series, probably even before Enterprise. It just seems awkward. I think there was a scene in Star Trek 3 where there's like two people in a bar, and isn't there like a holographic game they're playing with two old school airplanes that are holograms on the table doing something? And you know, I mean, there's a hologram right there. And these holograms are like that is like semi-transparent, not really tangible, physical with force fields. They're just holograms. But to me, it's a really awkward technology. I mean, it's so much easier to just look to a view screen and talk to somebody on a view screen. And then one person at the other end would have to get into some sort of booth to like see the room around them to have it projected. I mean, it's just stupid. It's not too advanced. It's just stupid. What is too advanced is you'll see starships loaded with force fields, which is fine. Deflector shields would exist on the Constitution-class starships by then, and assumably most other Starfleet vessels. Not a big deal there. But when a Constitution-class starship, decades later, launches and receives shuttles, they had to decompress the shuttle bay. But for some reason, every starship in Discovery has force fields to hold in the atmosphere in their shuttle bay. So it's like, why is the Constitution-class starship a holdover on this technology? The Constitution-class starships are supposed to be the ship of the line, at least until they come out with the Excelsior class. And it's like, but for some reason they don't have force fields in their shuttle bays to hold in the atmosphere when the shuttles come and go? Well, it would stand to reason that that technology was just not easy or convenient at the time. Okay, fair enough. Well, what's Discovery doing with this technology? What was the Senshao doing with it? Was the Senshao a very old ship, just one of the first ships to get upgraded with this? Oh wait, the Senshao, you don't see it launching the shuttles. What you see it is something that the first time you see it is like the late era movies, when you actually see like a hull breach blown open and a force field used to hold in the atmosphere. The first time in the timeline you see that is like the Excelsior class Enterprise B. I don't know if the Enterprise A ever gets upgraded with, but I'm pretty sure that if they had a hull breach on the Constitution class Starship Enterprise, the air would rush out the hole and they'd use emergency bulkheads to seal off the breach, you know. But here the Senshao gets chunks blown out of it and all these force fields holding in the atmosphere until they lose power for the force fields. And it's like, no, that's too advanced. That's a technology that they shouldn't have. But, you know, like, I do have problems with some of the stuff being too advanced. A four-wheeler buzzing past. There's a truck. I don't know. I hear noisy motors. But anyway, so like there's like problems I have canonically with Discovery introducing some technologies too soon, like the overusage of way too versatile force fields. Oh, yeah, some people liked something of mine on Instagram. That's good. I should soon end this video anyway. So I do have, from a perspective of aesthetics, I have problems with the overusage of holograms. From a perspective of being too advanced, no, I think it's absurd to call it too advanced. But what is too advanced is the introduction of the atmospheric force fields when Constitution-class ships for at least a decade, possibly multiple decades, will still be decompressing and repressurizing their shuttle bays when they launch and release shuttles. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It just very sloppy world building when it comes to certain things. And I don't think some things were introduced too early that some people say, like I mentioned the holograms. I think the holograms are stupid. They're not too advanced, they're too stupid. Now, what I do think is too advanced is the overusage of force fields. But, that's just my thoughts. Yeah. So when I rewatch Star Trek Discovery, I still have the same problems I had when I first had, because when I first watched it, I was like, that ship has force fields to hold in the atmosphere? That ship uses force fields to keep the shuttle bay pressurized? That's too early. But, whatever. I mean, the spore drive's just a weird technology. Personally, I think one of the reasons why I think Discovery should take place in a parallel timeline is I think it should be a parallel timeline that somehow the nature of space and time was altered to make it connected to some sort of subspace realm where magical, transcendent fungus can grow. Because I don't think the normal Star Trek universe should have that sort of fungal infection. In fact, the initials for the show, STD. Apparently, STD is a fungal infection. Star Trek Discovery, most people call it STD for short, because STD sounds like sexually transmitted disease, and that's the level of respect people have for Star Trek Discovery. Well, Star Trek Discovery is a fungal infection of subspace. Somebody really fucked that universe and gave it a fungal infection. And then somehow they used it for an alternate form of faster-than-light travel. Even the Mirror Universe, I felt things were a little out of place. I mean, there are things about Star Trek Discovery I find interesting. If you take away the too early introduction of force fields in the ship, the Senshu, how do you pronounce it? The Walker-class starship, the one that was in the first two episodes, the one that looked cool, I thought that was a pretty interesting starship. Still equipped with, it's upgraded with phasers, but it still has phase cannons as well. It has photon torpedoes. So it has like older style transporters, so it's like a mixture of older and newer technology. They established it's an old ship. And I thought it looked cool, it looked interesting. It looked like the basic saucer section with a bulked up rear to support, warp nacelles. I thought I could see how, it's part of the same design history that's would include the NX and the Akira class. Though I thought it actually looked cruder and older looking than the NX because it's more junky and bolted together looking than either of those ships. But, whatever. I mean, that's not really proof that something more or less advanced. But I did like that ship. The Discovery itself, on the other hand, I think is a weird, absurd-looking thing that... it looks like if Star Wars barfed out a roughly Star Wars-shaped starship. I'm not a big fan of the Discovery. And then in that rotating section, they've never really established what the purpose of that does and how it helps the magical mushroom drive blast them faster than the speed of reason. Yeah, I don't know. They never established how that helps them go ludicrous speed. In fact, it seems completely unnecessary, but yeah, I mean, I have a lot of problems with Discovery. I think it should take place in a parallel universe of sorts. CBS wants to call it the Prime Universe. They want to override the original universe. I say just make it a parallel universe. Make it connected to the... Find every excuse you can to connect it to the regular timeline. Fine, CBS, do that. But I'm like, don't pretend it's the regular universe. I just don't think it fits. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of like the criticisms, such as like I said, I have a slightly different criticism for certain things, like I mentioned, the hologram thing. I don't think those holograms are too advanced for the time period. I think they're just too awkward, ungainly, and ill thought out. But not too advanced. On the other hand, the force fields that hold in the atmosphere every time they have a hull breach, or for that matter in the shuttle base, I think that is too advanced. Yeah, they should have deflector shields around the ship to protect it from enemy weapons, but nothing as precise as what they're using to let shuttlecraft come in and out of the ship while holding in the atmosphere. But anyway, that's just my thoughts. I think Discovery's a mess. And as far as I'm concerned, the next episode, they could tell us the warp drive is powered by candy corn, and I'd be like, doesn't matter at this point. They've crossed a line where it's like, doesn't matter. Star Trek Discovery is not very good Star Trek. And I should end this. I was going to end this a while ago. It was Thursday. Thursday is the day that Deep Space Nine is on television. Yeah, I have it on DVD, but yeah, I also could watch it on Netflix. But when it's on TV, I like to watch it. Friday's the day with Star Trek Enterprise, so that's the best day for watching the Space Channel is Friday, because Friday has Star Trek Enterprise. But Deep Space Nine is a pretty good runner-up. Yeah. So anyway, maybe I should go Star Trek the television, or maybe nobody else is using the television right now. Maybe I should hook up my. Yeah, it's getting kind of late for that. Hook up my Commodore 64 Mini. That would be a good use of my time. It's a pretty cool device, the Commodore 64 Mini console. Lots of stuff to talk about, ramble about, whatever. But maybe I'll end this video now. It's about time for me to end this video. So, anyway, if anybody managed to get through this video, feel free to check out more of my stuff. Yeah, I'm sure at some point I'll get around to sticking in little shortcuts on YouTube, and versions of this might end up other places like BitChute and DTube. Who knows if DLive, if I ever manage to upload stuff to DLive again. Oh, BitTube, there's BitTube. Oh, BitTube's pretty cool, actually. So many places to upload, but I'm live streaming on YouTube. YouTube, the omnipresent site used by everybody. Yeah, alright, so let's see. Ending this video, I'll press that. Nothing came up. Alright, I'll try to end this again. Nothing happened. Ah, there we go. Are you sure you want to stop streaming? Do I? Yeah. Okay, I don't think it, yeah. All right, let's see.